Let's start with the delisting story then. We know that the three main Chinese telecom companies will be delisted. That process has started. The effects have rippled across to the energy sector, the energy ADRs, but also the internet sector, those companies listed in the US. How does this play out, do you think? Should we brace ourselves for more delistings?
I think that we should, Tom. I mean, we know that it's not a comprehensive list of companies that have been identified as communist Chinese military companies, so-called, and that there may be more. I think that the energy sector, to the extent that it is connected to the state, needs to be concerned that it may be vulnerable, and the same may go for the tech sector. So yeah, I think it's reasonable to worry about that.
Ever since the trade tensions really escalated between Beijing and Washington, there's been concern that China will retaliate against US companies operating here. We haven't really seen that come to pass. Is there a tipping point, do you think? What is your view on what China might do to retaliate?
It's a really good question. I do think that the business community is somewhat worried about that prospect. I think that so far we haven't really seen anything that looks like obvious retaliation, but also Beijing hasn't had a chance yet to take the measure of the Biden administration. I think Beijing is expecting the Biden administration to be a little bit tougher on them than the Obama administration or administrations prior to that. But I think there's also some hope on the Chinese side that the Biden administration will be a little bit more transparent and predictable to deal with. So a lot will depend on how the relationship kicks off right out of the gate and how it develops over the next few months. But the dual circulation policies that we've seen roll out in China definitely do seem to presage some, at least, I guess, reciprocal behavior on China's part in terms of policy. They're looking at a more protectionist United States, and becoming more self-reliant seems like a step in a more protectionist direction for them too.
Anna, just to circle back to the initial question that Tom posed earlier, and the big market story has really been about these big SOEs listed, of course, and there's a list that's out, tied to the China communist labeled military companies. My question to you is, for investors right now, a big part of the Chinese economy is still, state-owned. In other words, the state sector still plays a very big part. What do you know, or do you have any idea how perhaps we can inform investors whether or not they're holding a state-owned stock that might eventually be classified as such? Because that seems to be the risk right now that people are sort of puzzled with.
Which is understandable, David. I mean, I think if we were seeing a second Trump term, then the default safest answer would be potentially every Chinese stock is going to be considered, a Chinese communist military stock, because every Chinese company can, at least tangentially, be tied back to the state, according to a lot of policymakers in Washington. The Biden administration may take a different position on that, but it's been very ambiguous for the last few years exactly what constitutes a national security concern, what is a military end use, who is a military end user, how these things are defined. And I think the business community is really hoping that the Biden administration will be much more clear and transparent about that.